Hello everyone, and welcome to Teaching Writing in College, where the driving question is, how can instructors in higher education leverage theory, science, pedagogy, and craft most effectively to help their learners with writing? And I just thought I would do a spontaneous one today. I still want to finish my episodes on ROCSS, the series on ROCSS. I still have plans for that. I've just been kind of busy, but I had just what I thought was a fun experience in class today. And so I thought I would try to share it really quickly, mostly from the slides that I was using in class. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. The first place I want to begin is that I was inspired by Detect, Elect, Connect from David Perkins and Gavriel Salomon. And I got that from an article that appeared in the Educational Psychologist. It's an academic journal. It was a special issue, I think, on transfer. And the whole issue is really helpful in educational psychologists. I think anybody who is interested in learning transfer should read it. There are several articles in there. David Perkins and Gavriel Salomon, of course, are kind of a headliner there because they are so well known for their ideas about transfer, like bridging and hugging and high road and low road transfer. But their article in that special issue of Educational Psychologist is Knowledge to Go, a motivational and dispositional view of transfer. And they use Detect, Elect, Connect as a way to sort of frame that, that students, or anybody who's learning, I guess, they need to be able to detect opportunities to use knowledge in a different place, and then elect to use it. They have to choose to use it, and then they have to connect it. They have to find ways to make connections between how they learned it and then how it might apply in the new situation. And so I like to use that as a frame for my students as well. This was an English 107 class that I taught today. And I think I've said before on the podcast, it's a first-year writing course for STEM majors. A lot of our STEM majors here at GCU go into English 107 as their second of two writing courses as a freshman. And in that class, here's what I did. First, I had them skim over the inside of their name tag. And that's the instructions I have on the screen here. I'm just following my own PowerPoint mostly. But I guess I should back up and say, one thing that I had them do before that is I had them, for homework, I had them go find something from another class and bring it into my class. And that was their homework, with just that and maybe a brief description or reflection of what's in that assignment. And so it's from some other class. A lot of them brought stuff in from classes that they are taking right now, like exercise science or computer programming classes or whatever else it is they're doing. They're just, getting their feet wet in their majors, even at this early stage. And they brought that stuff in. That was what we started with. That was the homework. And so they brought in some of those materials. And then what I had them do is skim over the inside of their name tag. I like to use name tags in my classes, larger paper ones that I have them make, and they fold it lengthwise. So that their names are on there. And I also have them list their major and, when our class is and things. And I hand those out and collect them every class period. It just helps me keep their names fresh in my mind. But the other thing is, what I want to do is I want to use that name tag to create kind of a souvenir for them. There needs to be some way for them to carry conceptual knowledge from English 107 into their other classes or into their, life beyond this course. And so what we do is we take little crib notes. I do this with them all the time. I'll have them open their name tag while they have it in class, and I will ask them to, write down the name and the definition of a particular skill that we have learned in English 107. And so ROCSS is in there, stasis theory is in there, various strategies for structuring writing are in there. And then as we learn new ones, we keep adding to it. So for example, they have an entry in there on structure. I just have them write really small and I say, we're going to keep doing this. Sometimes after a while, students will ask me for a second piece of paper, which is great. But for example, lately for structure, I've had them write down things like structure happens in layers, because it does. There are lots of things happening with structure that, there's not just one strategy happening at a given time, and lots could be used. And then I have them list different ways to develop structure in writing in that entry. And so things like familiar to unfamiliar, which I think I've talked about before on this podcast, introducing familiar information to an audience before providing some unfamiliar information. And then based on that new information, once they've encountered that, they're ready for more unfamiliar information. So the general idea behind familiar to unfamiliar is that certain kinds of information need to come earlier so that other information can make sense later. And that comes from this idea of old to new that I encountered and used a lot in the Allen and Bacon Guide to Writing by Ramage, Bean, and Johnson. And so that's been really useful. I renamed it just because I thought it would stick better for students if I did that. And then I use that quite a bit in a lot of writing courses. Other strategies, just for example, under structure, classical argument is a great one. And, chronology is a great one. And arguments themselves, stasis theory, there are different steps to different types of arguments, and those can help develop some structure. So if you think about the causal chains that Marie Fahnestock explained in a 1983 article about, I think it was 1983, about stasis theory. A Theory of Types was part of the title. I'm sorry, I can't remember the full title, but she talks about causal chains in there. A lot of textbooks have used that. And, so their structure can come from argument. Causal chains really are also a way not to just develop ideas or develop an argument, but also to structure writing, because you can take causal chains and turn them into paragraphs. So argument is another source of structure. Visual structure, strategies for visual structure that we've learned, like PARC, proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast, which I first encountered in Mike Markell's technical communication textbook, also a really great book to use. I really like his book too. Like a lot of the ones I've used, he goes back and names a lot of strategies. And, those, if I remember right, his PARC, he found that in some business communication material, if I remember correctly. Right now my memory's failing me on those a little bit, but it's really great to look for those things in textbooks, and I like to contextualize them in terms of ROCSS. And so in their name tags, they've got a bunch of strategies for structure. They've got all of the different argument types for stasis theory in there. They have a definition of style, the way that writing sounds. We've talked about evidence. We've talked about the penny principle. I can't remember if I've covered that on the podcast, but that's one I would like to at some point that I like to use. But anyway, they've got a bunch of things inside their name tag that we've learned in class. And so the idea here is that they just review those for a moment and get themselves ready. So I'm kind of priming them to detect. And so after they do that, I spent just a few minutes talking about detect, elect, connect, which I've brought into class before. And I just say, this is kind of the process that you've got to go through if you want to use material from English 107 somewhere else. And I always make the argument, if you want this class to be worth it, you've got to use this elsewhere. And so here's how you do it. You detect, you find options in whatever writing you are doing. And remember, this also goes back to the homework that they brought to class from another class. So find options. And so in our case, it's find options in English 107 that could be used in that material for the other class. And then elect, decide what to use or whether to use any of it at all. Sometimes I will do this with them, and I'll just, say, what we're doing is we're just being prepared so that you know what all of these things are. You might not use all of them all the time, but there will be opportunities for them to come up, and so you can decide which ones to use. And then connect, adapt strategies to fit the new situation. I hope I put adapt in there twice. I apologize for that. But adapt strategies to fit the new situation, and that is connecting what is going on in English 107 to some other context. And so we talk about that just briefly. And then what I do is a strategy that I like to call flash feedback, a teaching strategy, where it's probably is called something else. It might be called a round robin or something like that. I need to go back and refresh my memory on those. I've learned about those back in graduate school in my first teaching seminar, I remember. But anyway, flash feedback. So hub, that's the kind of the spokesperson for the group for that day. That's a rotating responsibility for my students. But the hub is the spokesperson. And they explain their material from their other class that they brought. And then the rest of the group help the hub detect strategies from English 107 that could be used with that material. And so I've got a couple of bullet points there. So strategy that appears in the material, or a strategy that a student could use with the material to study it or to complete a task within the material. And then the hub takes notes. The group chooses a new hub and starts again so that everybody gets a chance to get some feedback from the group. But that's the idea there, is just detect strategies, which ones seem relevant to some of the things that they brought in. And so what they did is they brought their material in on paper, and they could have either, maybe printed out an assignment description. They could have maybe written a brief description of it, whatever it happens to be. And that's what they brought in. So in step one there, the hub explains material from their other class. They have something to talk from. They've got something tangible that they can show others and so on. And sometimes they're in some of the same classes, and they will share strategies about how to approach a particular assignment, which I think also is good. But that was the discussion that they had. And then I just developed, I just started asking students. I started going around and talking to them about it. And what got me excited and made me decide to do a podcast episode today was just a couple of conversations that I had. One came from an exercise science course where the student was developing it was kind of a lab where students in the lab are trying out exercises, and they're kind of coaching each other through some of the exercises, warm-up exercises. They are aspiring physical therapists. And so they were doing things like doing the exercises and then coaching each other through it, and then writing down what they were doing. And so they were targeting particular muscle groups, for example, and they had to know things like, what the position is for warm up for a particular muscle or group of muscles, or maybe stretches or things like that. And then they were also supposed to provide some cues that they would use to help a client or a patient complete the exercise. And so they were kind of in a position to learn about the exercise and then find some language to help teach it to somebody else so that the other person could do it correctly. And so when I talked to the student about it, we chatted for a few minutes, and I started to think, there's really some proposal argument there, kind of in the background, because they're trying to maybe avoid particular problems. For example, problems that can come with exercise without warming up. There could be problems that the person comes to the physical therapist with that they need help with, and the physical therapist has to decide, what muscles are going to need to be targeted, or what else needs to be worked on to help heal them. And then, of course, they need to teach them what that is. And so there's some problem solving there. And there's a solution that the physical therapist, or in this case, the student, would have to present. Part of the solution also has to do with communication and teaching the client what to do. And so the way that I understand proposals is that they have a problem, solution, justification format. And in the solution part, I like to look at that like a set of instructions. What somebody has to do if they're writing a proposal is they have to be really specific about what needs to be done, what actions need to be taken. And so, when I think about grant writing, which I have some experience with, or what I learned about proposals from writing arguments, again by Ramage, Bean and Johnson, or some of the other proposal textbook or books that I've worked with that have proposals in them. You need to be kind of specific about the solution, and so that's another thing going on here. A physical therapist would be deciding what kinds of exercises to have the client do. They would have to be able to show them and tell them how to do it. And so that's kind of a solution portion of a proposal argument after the client comes to them with a problem, or maybe an opportunity if it's just they want to get more fit, or maybe they're an athlete or something like that. And then in the assignment they may have had to justify, I can't quite remember, but giving reasons why you would do something in a certain way also is really important. And so there's a lot of proposal argument going on in the background of this assignment. And so just in my brain, my teacher brain, I'm thinking deep structure versus surface structure, which I also have on the slide here, where surface structure is just kind of what you see on the surface, like reading the assignment. Here's what the student has to do. They have to come up with this these little parts of a physical therapy lab, and the assignment is kind of talking them through that. But then the deep structure behind that really is a proposal, and it's being adapted to meet the needs of this particular assignment. So that's something I talked about one student with. Another student I talked with was in computer science and had an assignment where there was some coding involved. And there were a couple of things that I thought from our class applied to that just, by talking to him. One was visual structure and Park. Computer code, of course, is structured in a certain way, and sometimes it's color-coded and things like that, if you've ever seen it. Or there are tabs, there are indentations that are used, and punctuation and things like that will help. Use of white space will help show different parts of the code and things. And then there was also some discussion of variables, where and I just thought about this. I just made this connection. In law, when I think about definition, I often think about law because law spends so much time and it depends so much on definitions of things. And it just occurred to me that coding also does that. There are the instructions for the computer. You need to define variables for computers. But then they also need to be kind of human readable. And so there's that definition going through there as well. And then this person also, they were trying to do a particular thing, complete a particular task. And I think that also could relate to things that I can talk to students about with proposals. Once again, the solution to some kind of problem is, usually requires some pretty specific steps, some pretty specific courses of action. And so that would be true for his assignment as well. Here's how this needs to be done. There's a proposal there. But so those are some things that I'm just thinking about in my class, and I was really glad to be able to make some connections with students today about that, because really my class is supposed to support their other classes. I like to think of it as kind of a dress rehearsal where they have an opportunity to get some strategies that they can use for communication, and then to adapt and implement those strategies when they are working on things in other classes. And so making those connections I thought was really important. And so for this episode, that's all I've got. I just wanted to touch on those things. Oh, I do have a little bit more. So, and I didn't quite get this far in class today, but part of my plan was to get them as far as showing me in their reflection. There's a metacognitive reflection tied to the next project they have in my class in English 107. And I thought, talking about writing from other classes would be a really great way to answer some of the questions in the metacognitive reflection prompts that they have in my class. And so they might be doing it one way in my class with their project, but then they might be using the skills a different way in their other class. And so based on our conversation today, I can get them to this reflection that I have on the screen now, just 150 words. I'll read it really quick. So the first thing I was going to have them do, which I'll have them do next time, was name a strategy from English 107 that you would use, then define the strategy, for their homework assignment. Explain how the strategy applies to their work from the other class. Use quotes from the materials that they brought to show me what the material is. They could quote it. They could screenshot it too. I should add that in there. I can do that before I take this back in. Explain how the strategy applies to that quoted material or that screenshot or whatever it is. And then number 3, how is your use of that strategy similar to or different from the way you've been using it in our class? And so those questions are kind of a follow-up to detect, elect, and connect. How are they using it there, especially at the end? How are you connecting it by adapting it from our class to somewhere else? So that, I think, is all I have today. I really appreciate you listening. I think this may be a little bit of a short one, and that's great. I just want to be able to get one in and just share what I did in class today, because I learned a lot, by looking at what kinds of things students are doing in other classes. It really helps me understand how the material from my course fits with what they are doing elsewhere. And that's what my course is for, is to help them somewhere else. And so to me, that I think that's really an important thing to do. I do also I'm going to do a shout out here. This PowerPoint that you can see on the screen if you're on YouTube is just one that it's a design that came up when I was looking for designs and putting the PowerPoint together in the first place. And this one was one of those that was developed by somebody and put up there for PowerPoint users to use. And so thank you very much to Britta Tam. And there's her contact information. I thought it was a really nicely done design for the PowerPoint here. And that's all I've got. So thank you very much. I appreciate you being here with me in teaching writing in college. And I hope you are having a great time in your classes. And I hope also that you are having a good spring break. Some of you may be on spring break. Mine is coming up soon as well. And I will come back in the near future with a concluding episode about ROCSS, recurring occasion, content, structure, and style. Writing is made of genres. Genres are made of ROCSS. I've just had several episodes about that. I still want to do at least one more to explain where ROCSS came from, how I came up with it. And that's coming up on the next episode. But thanks again so much for listening or watching here. And I will see you again soon. Thank you.